Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Captain Dave here with the Atlantic Cup, and I have back today my three great friends who are whaling and dolphin specialists, Ann, Robert, and Monica. Today we've got some fun stuff. We're going to talk to you about UFOs. Now, that's not the UFOs you know of as aliens and Martians coming down from outer space, but these are unidentified floating objects and things you need to know about whales before you go out to sea. So I've got Ann, Robert, and Monica here. I'll let them each introduce themselves real quick and say hi to you all. Okay. Ann, how are you this morning?
Great, Dave. Thanks for having us back. Yes, again, my name's Ann DeMonte, and I am the director at the Audubon Society of Rhode Island's Nature Center and Aquarium in Bristol, Rhode Island. And Bob, Monica, and I are all part of a bigger group called the North Atlantic Right Whale Consortium. We're part of the education committee for the consortium. And this consortium is a group of scientists and environmentalists and conservation and policy workers all working to save the North Atlantic right whale, which is one of the most endangered whales in the world. And actually behind me, you see the mouth of our right whale model that we have here at the Audubon Society.
Cool. And Bob, how are you doing this morning?
Very well, Dave. Thanks again for having us here. I work at the New Bedford Whaling Museum as the Director of Education and Science Programs. Been there for 15 years. Taught a lot about whales in that time. And along with the work we do to educate folks about the North Atlantic right whale, all of us, we also work, just to bring general education about all whale, dolphin, and porpoise species. So it's great that you and Atlantic Cup kids have us back to talk about a pretty important topic today.
Oh, glad to have you guys. And Monica, good morning. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Dave. I'm doing great, thank you. So I work for Whale and Dolphin Conservation in our North American office. We are an international nonprofit, and our office in North America is based out of Plymouth, Massachusetts. So I'm a policy manager there, and I work on a variety of things, but one of them mainly being our education programs, and I also oversee our internship program.
Great. Well, this is the modern age, right? Where we're all from different places in the world, and reaching out through Zoom to share our education, what we know about these animals, these wonderful whales, with everybody else. So got a few questions here for you. So I'm a sailor, as you know, and I've sailed the Atlantic Cup a couple of times, plus I've sailed across the North Atlantic a number of times and actually around the world. And so, before I go out sailing out into the ocean, what are some things I should worry about or take notice of with regard to these UFOs? It's kind of a neat identification for these unidentified floating objects, because so often I don't really know what kind of whale it is, but I often know there's a whale out there.
Right. Well, like you, Dave, I'm a sailor. I've been sailing my whole life, and I think you're right. As sailors, we've been taught, whether we're junior sailors just learning how to sail or we're sailing in the Atlantic Cup, we're taught that before you go out to sail or go on the water, you do all your safety checks. You check the weather, make sure the weather's going to be okay. You know where your hazards are. You know if there's any underwater structures you need to be careful of. You need to know where your buoys and your markers are. And you need to be prepared before you go on the water. But what's just as important, which a lot of sailors unfortunately forget about, is that there's a lot of animals that live out there on the waters that we're traveling. Some are small, like little fish, and of course some are big, like whales. And it's really important for sailors to know where those larger animals are, such as the whales. Are they migrating near your area? Are they traveling near your area? Are they feeding in your area? Because you don't want a boat and a whale to collide or interact. So it's really important to know that information, just like you know your weather or your channel markers or buoy markers before you head out. And a lot of times sailors don't always know that, and they see things floating on the water, or they might even hit something floating on the water, and they don't know what it is, and they'll come back to shore, back to the docks, or maybe they talk to the Coast Guard and they say, you know what, I hit an unidentified floating object, and we call that a UFO, unidentified floating object, but they don't know what it is. So, and Bob is actually putting up a screenshot for us. This is available. It's a North Atlantic sightings map from NOAA, and it's available. You can that sailors can go on and actually see where whales are located before they go out to sea. So it's a very important and really great tool for sailors to use. So that's something to think about as we go out, that you really know what your unidentified floating objects are and who you're sharing the water with when you go out there.
Gee, that's kind of cool. So if you're actually kind of interested in looking for whales, you can also use that resource to know where the whales are kind of at, so you can go out and poke around and then maybe get to see some, I suppose, huh? Is that a viable option? Or
that's absolutely correct. In addition, there's other resources out there, such as apps on your phone, such one that's called Whale Alert. So there's a lot of resources for mariners before they head out.
great. So say I'm out there and I'm sailing along. What kind of evidence would tell me I've got whales around me, or what sort of things would I look for to know that I've got, you know, some whales? And if I see one or see something, is there something I should do? Somebody I should alert to?
Yeah, those are great questions. And there are a couple of key ways to look for whales. And these are actually some of the ways that we as researchers and whale watchers will go out and look for whales. We really don't have any fancy technology on board. We don't use any radar or sonar systems to find the whales. We're using our eyes and maybe binoculars if you happen to have them. So a couple of things that you can see on the screen here are some of the more identifiable ways. So we're looking for fluke prints, which are basically just flat patches of water. And that's actually created by the up and down movement of a whale's tail. So if you're seeing a flat patch of water like that, it likely indicates that a whale was just there and maybe went down on a dive, but might also still be really close to the surface. So you'll want to make note of that and try to avoid that area. Another way that we know whales might be nearby is if we see bubbles. And so in this area, because there's so much plant material in the water, it kind of glows green, but otherwise it might be kind of whitish. So that picture in the middle there, what you're seeing is a bubble cloud. And that's an indication that there's a whale just below the surface that's about to come up and take a big gulp of food. So this is common in humpback whales. You might see similar disturbances for some other species, but these whales are blowing rings of bubbles below the surface to corral their fish together so that they can take a big gulp and get as many fish at one time as possible. And so when the whale's coming really close to the surface during that process, you may even see some fish jumping out trying to escape. And also a lot of bird activity, because the birds are also eating those same fish as well. And then another thing too, especially if it's not a really windy day, you can actually see the whales blow, or it's exhale. So they are breathing air just like we as humans. They are also mammals. So what you're seeing there, some people think that it's a column of water, but it's not. It's actually just condensed air vapor. So just like when we go outside on a cold day, we can see our breath from that temperature difference. We can see that for most whale species pretty much all the time. And it's really tall. We're able to see it from a couple of miles away on a really calm day. So that is another really great indicator that you might have whales nearby. And if you're seeing any of those things, some of the best things to keep in mind are that the whales are a little bit unpredictable in their behavior. So you want to give them a wide berth so that they can move around as they need to, and you can avoid those dangerous collisions. So we always recommend keeping a distance of about 100 feet from these whales or any of these signs of whales, and that's about 2 school bus lengths. And you always want to parallel the course of the whale so that you're not accidentally coming into like a T intersection with them. If you can see the whale, you can see which direction it's moving. You always want to parallel the course. That way you make sure that your paths are never crossing.
That's really interesting. I know that in my sailing, I've seen the blows, you know, the steam vapor come up, and it was such an exciting thing the first time I saw that, because it looked just like the ones I'd seen reading in the books about whales and all. So it was really exciting to know that that's actually how it is, and it's pretty cool to see that. If you're a little too close, it smells really bad breath too. So that's one thing. So, you know, on occasion whales and boats meet, and I know from some of my racing friends who have had that problem, it's not a very, very good outcome sometimes. But what happens a lot of times when boats and whales come close to each other?
Well, if all goes well, there isn't any kind of collision. But if there is, is going to be damage to something or to both, whether, I'm going to pull up another image here and walk us through this, because there's some good, they're not happy photos, but you can see what happens when a boat can get too close.
Oh, wow.
See this incident here. There are a couple of pretty well-known incidents, one involving southern right whale, which I don't even know if we have a photo of that, but you can see the humpback and this sailing vessel getting a little closer to each other. Let's go. Here we go. So if you're close to shore, you get hit, you've got a chance to get back in, even if your boat has been cracked because you hit this 30, 40,000 pound animal and maybe something even heavier. But as in the case with this gentleman who was trying to, do a global race and was far offshore, as he said, the rear bearings of the keel were ripped off and the keel is hanging under the boat. It really damaged his boat. I think this boat ultimately sank, and this guy had to get rescued. So that's a worst case scenario. There are plenty of photos of whales with damage to their skin, whether it's slices from propellers from boats, or you can tell that this animal's been hit by a boat. So it's, we really started to do this just to help sailors know more about this and to help them with their safety measures. And the nice byproduct is you also ultimately end up protecting animals too.
Well, that's I think that's the most disheartening thing is I do know a couple of sailors who have hit whales, and generally they're sleeping on the surface at night, and that's where they seem to stumble upon them. Now, often we're racing real hard and we're pushing a boat real hard, and it's probably the sailor's fault more often than not because they don't have a good watch going on. But it can be quite frightening, and it can damage the boat and cause a lot, put the sailor at harm too. So it's really important to not only watch out for the whales, but watch out for yourself too. So I imagine there's some misunderstandings between sailors and whales of, like there's always some urban legends like, there's all kinds of old wives' tales about this or that, and you won't get sick if you cross your toes in the morning and things of that nature. Are there some misunderstandings about whales that sailors have out there?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's just because a lot of times folks just don't understand, when they head out, some of the behaviors of the animals that they may encounter along the way. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we often hear from sailors that I don't do big races, I sail inshore, or I've never seen a whale. I've been sailing for 30 years and I've never seen a whale, so they're obviously not where I am, so I don't have to worry about it. But the thing is that there are a number of species of whales that actually travel very close and into shore. The North Atlantic right whale is one of them. They can be seen right from the beaches often. They're very close to shore. Also, there's other species that are close to shore, such as small dolphins. Sea turtles are often close to shore. And also, too, just because you don't see a whale does not mean, like we talked in the beginning, that they're not there. So it's something you always have to be aware of when you're at sea, keeping your eyes out. As sailors, you wouldn't say, oh, I'm not going to look out for a power boat, or I'm not going to look out for a buoy, or I'm not going to look out for an underwater rock because, I'm just not going to be in that area. Sailors are always aware of what's surrounding them as part of us as going out to sea as a sailor. So they should be aware of the marine life just as much as they're aware of all the other things around them.
I know that when I'm out sailing, I'm always looking for whales because I always want to see them, and that's
Right.
I just love seeing these animals. I remember one time coming up the California coast, making a delivery between Cabo San Lucas and Los Angeles, and coming alongside one there, and he just kind of rolled over on the side, and that big old eye just kind of stared up at us and to look into those ancient eyes and just know that boy, there's something going on there. They're a beautiful thing to see. So
Oh,
you
that's
got
a
to
once in a
protect them.
lifetime. Yeah, and
Yeah.
also too, we've let people know too that if you are that close to a whale, or you happen to be, the whales are suddenly around you, maybe cut your engine, drop your sail, just wait for the whales to leave and enjoy watching them, and they'll go on their way, and then you can go back to your course.
Now, one thing too, I think it's always a instant reaction to grab the camera and try to get some pictures of them. And I think as a citizen scientist, you can do a lot with those pictures if you upload them to iNaturalist or whatever. I believe they can put them up and people can identify them. And because of the markings on the whales and the scars and stuff like that, they often are able to identify which whales and all. Is that somewhat helpful to the studying the movement of these whales, the right whales and stuff?
Monica, do you want to talk a little bit about the reporting aspect?
Yeah, so there are a couple of different places that you can submit your sightings. And I don't know that there's like one global database, unfortunately. There tends to be more like regional collaborations and regional catalogs. So humpback whales in particular are very charismatic. People really enjoy watching them. They're some of the more easy to identify species. So, people get a little bit into it and it's fun to figure out who the whales are, but the science behind it really is, like you mentioned, that we can get a better idea of their movements and figure out how they're using these ocean habitats and where they're traveling to and from. And so it definitely can be helpful to share sightings. In particular, and we kind of already talked about collisions and when those happen, and it is important to report those. I know there might be that underlying fear that you might get in trouble for it, but the reality is in my 10 years of doing this and working in this field that I have not, I don't think I've heard of any more than maybe 2 cases where somebody actually had some level of follow-up with the federal government about the incident and had to defend themselves for it. So not very likely to happen. And in those cases that I'm aware of, there was some clear negligence involved. So it was not, the typical accidents that we know do happen. So reporting those incidents, reporting sightings, and especially sightings of any North Atlantic right whales, because they are so endangered, that's all very helpful. And especially if you're far offshore and you don't have the contact number saved in your phone or have them handy, you can always radio the Coast Guard and they can relay any messages that they need to. But if you do have photos or whatnot, we have a bunch of resources on our website, which I think we'll put up later, that can direct people on where to report those sightings.
That'd be great. And of course, as we've mentioned in the previous episode that we did, these right whales are pretty rare and pretty endangered. And often they're part of the Atlantic Cup race course. And those people sailing in that sort of Boston, Northeast coast area, the right whales are real important in that area. So keeping an eye out for them, watching out for them, and helping you guys track them is probably just good stewardship of the oceans and caring for the ocean and the species of life that's in the ocean. So
that is true. And we often say, sailors are on the water all the time. So the scientists are not always on the water every day like sailors are. So if sailors can report these kinds of things and tell us, it's very helpful for the scientists to know where these animals are.
Yeah, that's a factor of citizen scientists. And one of the things that I learned when I was sailing around the world was that the cost of research vessels and all make it prohibitive for them to spend extensive amounts of time out in the middle of the ocean and way out in the desolate areas. So those of us sailors who are out there are a big help to the research. So.
And Bob, do you want to talk about the myth of how whales might behave if people see them?
There are some folks that think that whales are going to hear the ship or their boat, or they're going to be able to move out of the way. That often doesn't happen. The boat, the whales, if the sounds, like just say you've got a boat with a deep keel and the sound goes around the boat, it could go around the whale as well. That's one way the whale might not hear the noises. And sometimes these animals are so focused on feeding that they just don't even notice anything else that's going on. And the whales, they still haven't you know, when whales came about, as we know them 28 million years ago, they didn't have to deal with boats and ships in the water, and they still have really evolved to deal with human created noise in the ocean. So they're just not geared or programmed to get out of the way. That's just not what they do. So it's really up to the sailor or the boat captain or whoever to move the boat and just have people keeping an eye on what's out in front of the boat.
That's a real important thing, Bob, there. And we know one of the things that I was very conscious of sailing around the world, and I try to bring back and explain to people, is that, you know, as human beings, we're not really designed to be out on the ocean and thriving out of the ocean. So different than being on land, you know, we're really invading their neighborhood and their territories, and we need to be respectful about barging in on their lives. And we should be very careful to let the whales and the sea turtles and the other species of the ocean live their lives, and we should very carefully step around them and observe at a distance and be respectful of their territories. So, and because, you know, I tell kids when I'm in the schools that, you know, when I'm on the ocean, I'm actually pretty much at the bottom of the food chain. If something goes wrong, I'm the one who's going to get eaten. So I try very hard to not get in trouble with a whale or a shark or anybody else. So, did you guys have anything else you want to add to it? It's been a great discussion here. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
You can certainly
I think that's it, Bob. It's not only about excuse me, Dave. I think it's not only about protecting the whales, but it's also protecting yourself when you're on the water too. You don't. Whales are a lot bigger than most of our boats. So if something happens, the whale might win if a whale and a boat meet. So it's just learning how we all share the ocean resources together. So, so I think we do have, unless Bob or Monica have anything else, we do have I think, Bob, do we have that list of our resource people?
Yeah, we're just popping up our cute little logo here, and I will switch over. Oops.
Yeah. And
Well, while Bob is doing that, you know, thank you guys for coming out again. This is great. A lot of great information for the students, and I've heard from quite a few parents that they really enjoyed watching these too.
Oh, that's great.
There's our
and there's a list of different ways you can contact us and get information. Great.
Well, great.
And anybody can call or email us if they have any questions.
Yeah, great friends and great resources here. So if any of you students out there see a whale and you want to let these folks know, feel free to do so. And you can always let us know at the Atlantic Cup as well, and we'll pass the information on. So thanks again. Let's do this again, huh?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
All right.
Your Atlantic Cup.
Take care, guys.